Introduce yourself and explain why you are a candidate for the Oakland School Board.
Well, I arrived in Oakland in 1963, so I've been here about 57 years. You guys aren't that old. And of course, I got to McClymonds and found out a lot of the inequities, and I ended up going down to the school board and asking the question about why was McClymonds different than Skyline and Oakland Tech. And I didn't get any really good answers. So I've been involved for the school board and the school district for 57 years all total. I was at McClymonds for 16 years. I think that Elihu Harris and Dr. Cook twisted my arm and said, you must go for District 7 because we don't see a candidate right now that we're comfortable with. I wanted to retire and sit in my backyard and read my paper, and they said it's no time to do that right now. So I am in it, and I understand that it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm used to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tapscott. Hi, let me just introduce myself. I'm Amelia Bailey. I'm also an Oakland teacher, and thank you for participating in this.
Where'd you get those braids, Amelia?
I did it real quick this morning. So your second question is, and then I'll put it in the chat. Actually, I guess I should do that first, huh? Thank you for being patient with me. What is your strategy to run a competitive campaign for the school board? And will you commit to rejecting donations and support from privatization-linked organizations such as Go Public Schools and the California Charter School Association?
I'm going to keep my language as clean as I can. I have never been a charter person. I think the millionaires and the billionaires are buying politicians, school board members, and I'm not a big fan of charter schools. They discriminate and also they segregate. And they've been doing that now since I've been kind of involved around 2011.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So here's your next question. I posted it in the chat. What is the role of the school board?
I think they need to listen to parents in terms of what they feel they need for their child. I don't see quality education in all of our schools, particularly the high schools, which I'm most familiar with. But we have a lot of problems in the elementary schools as well. When you look at the feeder patterns of schools in below 580 and primarily Black neighborhoods, we do not have a cohesive alignment process for feeding kids. I looked at District 7 and I saw that they had 17 schools and only one middle school. So in West Oakland, it's just the opposite. We have 4 feeder schools, but a half of middle schools because of the charter schools coming in and taking up public school space.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, your next question, Mr. Tapscott. Legislation like Prop 39 and Measure G have resulted in OUSD public schools and charter schools competing for resources. How will you navigate this situation to ensure equitable distribution of resources, funding, and access to district-owned property?
Well, I think we have a great opportunity to get some people on the board. There are board members that are on there now that are bought and paid for by Go, by millionaires and billionaires. And I talked to Keith about every time we close a public school, Keith, you realize we lose teachers. So I'm not for any more school closures, and I'm not for any more charter schools placed in our district. Not only do they drain the resources, but they don't include special ed students, which my wife is a special ed teacher. They do not accept Black students on the large part, and even those like KIPP that are charter schools are still segregated. So my opinion of charter schools is that they were created so that white students do not have to go to black school with black students. They've set back integration 50 years in the city of Oakland.
Thank you. Kamisha, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you. Could you describe some examples and sources of environmental racism in your district and say how they have affected OUSD students, parents, and educators? What commitments can you make towards combating the disproportionate impacts of pollutant exposures on OUSD students, parents, and educators?
Well, I formed the new McClymonds Committee in 2011, basically to improve McClymonds High School. When the state came in and took over for 3 years, they broke the school up into parts. They never put those parts back together. Randy Ward came in for 3 years, took a $50 million deficit, and during the 3 years he was here, he overspent by 50 million. So when we got control back, we owed $100 million back to the state. And I never could understand why we had to pay for money when they had the control. We tried to get Sandre Swanson in Sacramento to go to Charleston and forgive the $50 million that they generated. And we were told the loan had then gone to Bank of America in San Francisco. So you look at the devastation that it has done, particularly in Black and brown neighborhoods. And you look at the fact that they've closed 6 schools in West Oakland, and now we have 4 charter schools in place of those 6. We have 300 kids in the elementary level moving to middle school that must go outside of West Oakland. And if you go over to Bart in the morning, you will see parents getting their child to another school. We have half a feeder school, West Oakland Middle, that can accommodate 100, but we have 200 kids coming out every year, and that's 300 kids having to travel outside of West Oakland because the district and the superintendent will not give us a feeder school for McClymonds.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question, Mr. Tapscott. Students and families identified lack of student support, class size, deteriorating school facilities, high teacher turnover, and outdated curricular resources as the highest priority issues facing our schools. And I can read this again if you want. How would you partner with teachers, students, and families to solve these problems and meet the needs of students? So I could be happy to repeat that. It's kind of a long one. Let me repeat it one more time. Students and families identified lack of student support, class size, deteriorating school facilities, high teacher turnover, and outdated curricular resources as the highest priority issues facing our schools. How would you partner with teachers, students, and families to solve these problems and meet the needs of students?
Can you imagine McClymonds High School going from 61 courses before the state takeover to 29? And when you look at Tech, Oakland High, and Fremont and Skyline, they have an average of anywhere from 800 to 1,000, 1,500 classes. But if you look at McClymonds, it has 53 classes. They used to have 900 students when they had a full schedule over there. And I asked the question in 2011, what happened? And they talked about how the district broke the school up. I brought to the board's attention in 2016 about the lead problem. The fact that our kids still are drinking water over there 3 years later, and they have not spent any money, which would probably be $90,000 to repipe McClymonds High School. We have Measure J that was $778 million, and they will not fix that school up. It's over 100 years old. The curriculum is a lot worse than any of the other high schools, but Castlemont is not far behind. Castlemont has 63 classes total, and Fremont has 67. If you look at Tech, they have 1,960, Oakland High 1,557, and Skyline 1,577. Now, some of that is in the language department, but when you look at the basic requirements, they are all the same. But when you look at performing arts and electives, you will see that McClymonds only has 4.
Thank you, Coach Tapscott.
Thank you. Here's your next question. Do you believe in and support the right of public school employees to organize and to bargain collectively? How will you work to maintain and strengthen employees' rights, including bargaining, changes in job description and assignments, healthcare, and pensions?
Well, I've spoke on behalf of the unions that had not gotten a pay raise in I don't know how long. I don't understand why we don't reward the people that are doing the work. I think we're top heavy administratively as well as management. They gave the superintendent an extension on our contract for additional years, and there was no evaluation. So I'm very critical of the job right now that the superintendent is doing in terms of guiding us through improvement. I guess she's been here now, what, 3 or 4 years? And the board basically are telling her, I believe, the charter school part of the board anyway, what she is and what she isn't to do. And we need a strong leader as our superintendent.
Thank you.
Okay, Coach Tapscott, your last question. Do you have any questions for us? Would you like to add any closing remarks? That's your last question.
Well, I understand 15,000 people voted according to the register here in Oakland, which means I've got to get 8,000 votes to be elected to the board. We're starting to organize now. This is totally new to me. I've gotten a tremendous amount of support. I understand that District 7 is one of the largest districts in the city, and I can't understand why we have 11 middle schools, 11 elementary schools, and 1 middle school. That creates a hardship, just like in West Oakland, with parents having to go outside their neighborhood. So we need to look at the realignment of the total district and put feeder patterns and system in place that makes sense and more convenient for parents and students.
Thank you. Well, that was the end of the interview questions. Thank you for taking out your time to speak with us. I'm glad that we were able to get through the hurdle of actually talking with each other. But if you don't have any other questions, thank you.
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate the opportunity to run for the school board. I think with the youth movement I see across the United States, we have a real opportunity now to move a lot of agendas forward. We have so many laws. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. We got Brown versus the Board of Education. We got Independent 16s that says it's against the law to discriminate and segregate. But when these laws are all put together, we now see more segregation 50 years later than we had back in the day. And I think part of this is we got law and order, and I've never been in favor of the police being on campus. When we started in '63, we had campus supervisors. If we had a problem, we called the police department. We're paying $5 million for 1,000 Broadway a year plus expenses, but we cut the school budgets, and then we turn around and spend $6.4 million for a police department that I feel like we don't need. If there are problems off the campus, that should be the Oakland Police Department, and they should be able to handle problems on the campus.
Thank you. Well, with that, please enjoy the rest of your day, and the committee will be reaching out shortly.